Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode number 82 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today our good friend, Darryll Stinson. Darryll is a mental health advocate and the founder of Second Chance Athletes. Great conversation, everybody. Sit back and enjoy. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. We got a guy across the screen with a big smile on his face, Darryll Stinson. What is up, brother? What are you up to now, brother?
Oh, man. I'm helping speakers build their businesses, teaching them everything I learned from people like Les Brown and Lisa Nichols and Jack Canfield and Chris Broussard and David Meltzer and Pete Vargas, Grant Baldwin. I've invested in everyone's stuff because I believe in the power of investment. So I'm giving everything I learned to other people to help share their message. So I'm really passionate about that right now. Got a mastermind launching in February. So, man, dude, I'm on fire. I'm on fire.
I love it. I'm going to dive into that quickly. You hammered out quite a few big names there.
Yeah.
Investing in yourself is something a lot of people are always on the border with. They don't really appreciate or understand the value of it, and they don't understand the value that brings to you, because everything you learn, you're just building up your knowledge base, your encyclopedia, and as you grow, you're going to be able to pass it on to others. Explain the value and what is meant to you having all these mentors along the way.
You are your greatest investment. People who usually don't value investment is just because they haven't done it yet. So when you start to invest yourself and you see an ROI, you start to see, man, I joined this mastermind, I joined this program, I bought this course, I read this book, and now wisdom is coming out of my mouth. Now my relationship circle is expanding. Now this is happening in my life, all because I had an investment. I mean, the argument's over at that point. So typically you're just trying to convince people who haven't invested in themselves that they're worth the investment and that they're going to experience a return on their investment. And that typically, it's not every time, but usually the larger the investment, the larger the return. And I had to grow from that because I was real big on like $100 courses. And I think the most I ever paid was like $297. And then I did like $1,000 for like a group mentorship program that was like once a month from somebody who didn't know half of what they were talking about. And then I got hit with the high ticket from somebody. And I was like, a what? $20,000. I was like, I'm not paying $20K. Like, I cannot justify paying somebody that much to coach me. And then I wondered, instead of worrying how much I had to pay, I was wondering how much it cost me to make the same mistakes that they made in their past. And I
love that.
I know. And here's the thing. For the people that are listening, they're like, man, I don't have that amount of money. I don't got 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40K to invest in a coach and a program. Let me tell you something that one of my mentors said to me. This is my second high ticket investment, but I was still kind of struggling with because the numbers just keep getting bigger, I feel like.
Yeah.
He said, okay. He said, you don't have the money in your hand, but can you agree that there's enough money out there in the world for this? I said, well, duh. He said, okay, well then why don't you ask the question, how do you access more of that money? I was like, oh. And ideas started to pop up. So instead of focusing on what I had in my hand, I started focusing on what the world has and is. And then how can I be of service to exchange value, to access more of the abundance of wealth that's available? And so that enabled me to make some of those investments.
Do you want me asking who that mentor was?
That was Mike Z, my Magic Mike. You know Mike Zeller?
No.
Okay, so yeah, he's kind of like like an undercover coach, man, but he's worked with a ton of big names. And like Tony, he used to get mentored by Tony Robbins, Jay Abrams. He's helped a ton of entrepreneurs. He's got large investments. Like, he's a boss, but he's just kind of like low key. He just started like promoting himself this year because he wanted to do like this challenge with this e-commerce partnership program he has going. So
what's
he's
his
the one.
Name? Mike Z?
Mike Zeller. Yeah.
Mike Zeller. Is he a young guy?
I mean, what's your definition of young? I mean, I'm young, but he's
in his late 30s, early 40s.
Nah, I want to say he's probably mid 40s. Okay. Don't quote me on that though, because if he's not, I feel bad. Mike, please don't listen to this podcast.
I'm trying to figure out who he is because I have something in my head, image of somebody in my head that I think who it is, but I thought that guy was a lot younger, so it might not be that. It might not be the right guy. So you said Lee Brown. That's a big name. Were you mentored by him too?
Les Brown.
Brown.
He's my current. I just invested. I mean, I've been following him for a long time, like getting mentored by distance. I was part of his group coaching program, and now I finally invested in the high ticket boys. So I'm excited.
So give me an example, just for your audience to understand, a program like that. How long ago, for people that are looking at something like that, or even looking at it into yourself? You don't have to give details of your program over the podcast, but in a program like Les Brown, I mean, he adds a lot of value because, like you said, his experience, you can't put a dollar value on this experience. Yeah. And that's why I always tell people, people that don't have money to invest, and there are people that don't have money and they're starting off, they don't have money to invest, $20 on a book, whether it's your book, we'll talk about that, or somebody else's book, you're literally taking 20 or 25 years of someone's life. They take their most valuable lessons, put it in a book for $20, and maybe 3-4 weeks of your time, you are learning so many lessons. So for people that say, oh, I can't, there's no education out there, there's nothing that that's bullshit, because if you don't have the money, you can still educate, and you still have a mentor, which is an indirect mentor. And having a mentor through a book or through other means of education, right? So something like Les Brown, explain more or less how the program all comes together. How long is it? And if you don't want to talk dollars, but you could give us an idea of what you're looking at price range for something like that.
Yeah. So, the greater the access, usually the greater the investment. So, and how much they're involved is what I mean by that. So, Les has like low entry levels. When I started working with him or learning from him, I want to say it was like $97 a month or something, just for like one of his programs. And then the next one was $497 a month for his Prodigy program. This one's a pretty penny. It's 20 plus K
a month.
No. This is just one time investment. Not a month, man.
We should be investing on real estate for that much money.
I know. I'm not there yet. No. So yeah, just one time investment, and I did it for 2 reasons. Number one, exposure. Les is at a stage in his life where he's ready to pass the torch. And I've been told, this is not my words. No, granted, if you ask me, I'm Darryll, right? But I've been told, like, Darryll, you're kind of like a mixture between Les Brown and Eric Thomas. And I'm like, okay, sure. That's how you contextualize my gift. Yeah. But I've joined because I know when he hears my voice, my story, his mind is going to go, where have I spoken that needs to hear his message? So number one, the exposure to him in his network. Number two, the wealth of wisdom. I mean, the best speakers make the fewest words go the farthest.
I love that.
And he's one of those guys that can say a sentence that'll leave you thinking for the rest of the day.
Absolutely incredible gift he has for and I would say that gift also comes from experience, right? Absolutely. I truly believe when it comes to there's that saying. We'll talk about that. This is a little topic I'm going to ask you, but let me throw that at you right now. Entrepreneurs, do you believe people are born entrepreneurs, or you could be taught to be an entrepreneur?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I really do. Like 90% of the entrepreneurs I know that are like really high achievers started out like us, when we were younger, man. Like I had my own lawn care business, and just hustling, and so 90%, but there's the 10% who, I don't know, just didn't have it earlier. Maybe it was always in there, but it wasn't until they realized like, hey, I don't know if I like working for someone. I want to be my own boss, that they said, I want to try this entrepreneurship thing. And then I do believe it can be taught.
I do believe the lessons could be taught, the educational value that could be taught. But I do also believe the drive and the hustle is hard to teach somebody.
It's very hard. And so let me give you a little bit of context, and I get where you're going with that.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have, I can teach you, organization, I can teach you vision casting, I can teach you leadership development, I can teach you all this stuff, but I can't make you hungry. I can't make you have the willpower, the tenacity of an entrepreneur. To which I would say, granted, my expertise is in mental health, motivation, and marketing. And so in the motivation space, the best motivators know how to pull and inspire and tap into someone's deepest desire and call that to the forefront. So typically when a person doesn't have that zeal, it's because they haven't found that desire.
Interesting.
Okay. That deep desire that makes them, because there's something driving every entrepreneur, whether it's the thrill of the chase or whatever it is. We found it and we're like, I want more of it. Right. And some people that don't have the desire just haven't found it. And I just feel like if we help them find their why, it'll make them a lot more passionate about their life.
I say this all the time. Darryll is obviously, once you find your passion, everything else comes a lot easier, right? Because you have that exactly that why, that how to get up every morning and all that. But at the same time too, I've mentored a lot of entrepreneurs, and I've seen some of them achieve such greatness. And then I see a lot of them, once that door closes, that motivation, that engine slowly stops. They don't refill the gas, and that car slowly starts pedaling and slowing down. And that's what I find with some people. They don't have that drive, that gift, like that get up where it's like, I get up on Monday and I'm like, let's go. I'm so excited. It's Monday. And people are like, oh, it's Monday. I got to start. So it's that reframing your mind and going and having that drive, right? So I always argue with myself, even with that, like, is there something with, like, could you actually teach that drive to somebody, or is this something either is built in you or not, right?
I think you can help people find that drive.
Yeah, you do. Huh?
I do. I really do. Now, granted, every person, it's like different. If they wanted to, they can find it.
Yeah.
If they don't want to, then no. But if they're like, man, I want to achieve, but I don't have that motivation to get up in the morning. I don't have that desire. I'm not like, that's not in me. I'm like, yeah, it is. You just got to find where it is. But for the person who just doesn't want it, then they don't want it. So I'm not going to try to give them something or help them find something that they don't want. But there are people out there that want it and just need to walk through a process to find it. So
Les Brown, how long is this program with him?
Man, what's funny? I don't even know. I don't even know. Like, our first session is actually tonight. Our first session is tonight.
Is it one-on-one, or is it more of a group setting? Or
it's a group setting, but you definitely get direct access, right? So he's going to be on the call, and it's a select amount of people. It's not like it's going to be filled with hundreds and hundreds of people. Yeah. So I'm curious to see how it goes tonight.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And I love how you have the understanding of, you didn't say it, but and you said in different words, but the networking aspect.
Oh yeah.
Tapping into the network of individuals and being able to access that you're literally taking years and years of a leap ahead.
Yeah.
And like I said, something like Les Brown, one phone call could change the direction of your whole career automatically. Absolutely. With that one stage or that one connection or that one book deal or something like that. So I people out there that have to understand and value that, because you can't put a dollar value on it, even though you are putting a dollar value on it, but it's incredible. So we went off course here. Darryll, let's talk about your amazing story. Let's start off from Darryll's a young kid, and let's dive into your story and let our audience, which I'm sure you've told a million times, but let our audience hear your story.
Man, you want to go to the kid version of me?
Go to the kid version of you.
Leave him alone. He's still mad at me for some stuff I did back then.
I love it.
Man, I was a smart kid. I was born in a town called Jackson, Michigan. Nobody knows where that's at. I always say it's home of Tony Dungy. And then people go, "Oh, I know Tony Dungy." I said, "Yeah, me and him are the only famous people from there." And they're like, "Ha ha ha, you're not famous, you know." And so it's small town, and I was a very smart kid. My mom put me in accelerated learning classes, and that meant that I was one of 2 Black students in an all-white class. And I didn't have any problem with it. They loved me. I was like one of the smartest kids in the class. They cheated off my test. They laughed at my jokes. They called me goon. And one day I was walking down the hallway in the 3rd grade on a bathroom break, and I see a group of Black students circled together, and they're kind of like cracking jokes and stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm about to go in there and get in on this, right? Because I thought that I was just, everybody loved me since my classmates did. And I walked over there and I said, y'all, what's so funny? And nobody answered. I'm like, yo, what's so funny, y'all? What y'all talking about? Let me get in on this. And it was like, you're what's funny, white boy. I was like, white boy? I'm in 3rd grade. I didn't know what that meant. So I started going, asking people, hey man, why do they call me white boy? They said, oh, it's because you talk proper. It's because you are in the accelerated learning classes. And that's when I learned that there was I was known in the school as the Black kid that quote unquote talks and acts white. And that created a deep rooted insecurity in me that who I was not enough to be liked or loved by others. Now, for me, it was the way that I talked. It was the way that I looked. It was the music I listened to. For someone else, it could have been that you weren't the prettiest or you didn't get accepted or invited to the party or you didn't make the sales quota. We all deal with this thing that I call rejection. And that's what I dealt with. And that made me change everything about myself. I changed the way I talked. I changed the way I walked. I changed the music I listened to. I left. I started skipping school. I started selling drugs. I started doing all of this stuff to fit in with this Black community. And you know what, bro? It worked. They embraced me. I got street cred. They call me a different type of goon. And I am embarrassed to admit it, but I actually defriended all of my white friends. Pretended I didn't know them, even though we were still going to the same school. And going into my high school year, I started to get really good at sports. I was always kind of good because I was tall, but then my athleticism started catching up my height, started getting noticed locally, regionally, nationally. And I realized that sports enabled me not to have to choose between white and Black crowds because nobody cared if I went to the bonfire or the basement party. For those of you who don't know what basement parties is, it's like typically minorities get together and somebody's like raggedy old basement and it stinks in there and you just play ratchet music all the time and it's crazy, man. There's usually probably a pit bull somewhere in the background. Somebody's shooting dice. Like it's a crazy environment. They didn't care if I was at the bonfire or the basement party, if I listened to country music or rap music, if I talked white or talked Ebonics. Like all they cared about was how many points did I score, what team were we playing, how far were we going to go. And so that made me hungry because I was like, man, this sports vehicle gives me the ability to be myself and I'm going to be wealthy and get my family out of poverty and get out of this mess that I grew up in. And so I fell in love with it. I dedicated my life to it. I got ranked number 3 in the state of Michigan preseason Mr. Basketball, which was 2 spots behind Draymond Green. I was number 9 in the Midwest for my position as defensive end. I went to Central Michigan University to play both football and basketball. One of my coaches, who's Coach Stripling, he's a well-known in the coaching industry. He told me, bro, it's not a matter of if you're going to the league. It's just a matter of when. You're like a freak of nature. You're 6'5", you're fast, you were all-state track athlete. Like you're going. And I played my freshman year. I was on a pass rush package. I did pretty good. And then at the end of my freshman year, I'm trying to impress the upperclassmen with how much I can squat. And I ruptured a disc in my back. Now, I didn't know the difference between being hurt and being injured. So I kept playing through the pain. I was still leading workouts, still killing it on the field. And then one day I looked down at my leg and I kind of like slapped it because I was like, man, it's kind of hurting. And I realized it's jello. My right leg is rock solid. So I go get an MRI and I had to have an emergency back surgery because my leg was like days, if not hours away from being paralyzed. Because the pinched nerve did so much damage to my left leg that it was going to be paralyzed. So they do my surgery, double laminectomy, and they said, look, you got a golden ticket. We're going to honor your scholarship. You can focus on education, and you can come around football whenever you want. But they didn't understand that sports was not what I did. It was who I was. And whenever your identity is attached to your activity, you make poor decisions. So I begged them to please let me have another chance. I signed a liability waiver so that they would not be liable for my injury or death if I were to get hurt. And I was supposed to be non-physical contact for 12 months after my sports injury or my surgery. I was starting within 6 because me hurt was better than the next guy fully healthy. So I put my body through 2 years of drug addiction. I was manipulating the healthcare system, getting multiple epidural shots in my back. I was going to physical therapy 7 days a week, 2 times a day. I was getting acupuncture in my back, nerve killings. I mean,
how old were you through this whole process?
So this was
you're high school still, or you're in college already?
No, I'm in college now.
You're in college.
So I was
early
probably
20s?
19, 20.
20, yeah.
Yep. Addicted to opioids. I started selling more drugs to pay for my medical expenses because the university wouldn't pay for them. That would make them liable. And my personal insurance was trash. It was PPO. The nearest hospital that accepted my insurance was like 2.5 hours away. So my life is spiraling out of control for 2 years. I'm literally going from practices to selling drugs to games to selling drugs to film sessions to classes to selling more drugs. And it's like that for 2 years. Finally, my addiction got so bad that I was taking so many opioids that every time I made contact on the field, my nose would bleed. And the coaches saw that I was having these frequent nosebleeds. And so they said, well, Stinson, we don't know what you're doing, bro, but we can't have this. So going into my senior year, they kicked me off the team. And that's when I got angry, frustrated. I didn't think that my life mattered outside of sports. On top of that, my phone stopped ringing. Nobody's asking me for autographs. Nobody's trying to interview me. My teammates weren't hitting me up. Like people on campus didn't know who I was anymore. And so that created this self-hatred, this deep insecurity. And I said, see, look, without sports, no one likes me. Remember the early childhood rejection. Who I am is not enough to be liked or loved by others until sports came around. So I don't have that anymore. And so, man, I got suicidal. Started mixing alcohol with my opioid pills, hoping that, I would just make some concoction that would take me out. I would drink whole fifths of alcohol and get in the car and hope that a car accident would end it all. And I went from 275 pounds to 219 pounds in 4 weeks. So I was trying to starve myself to death. And I was at a low place, man.
Through this whole process, your family, where were they? Like your siblings, your parents, where were they?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, my family was around, man, and I was really good at hiding it. That I was struggling with, like, taking my life. I didn't want to admit that because they had always looked to me as the leader and the star of the family. So I didn't want to let them know that, hey, man, I don't even want to be here anymore. So my family was really supportive, but I wouldn't let them in. And that's one piece of advice that I always give people, especially high achievers, is that you have to be fully known to be fully loved. And that vulnerability is a Batman signal for love. So I would throw out some hints out there, like, I'm kind of feeling rough, kind of feeling down. And I was expecting them to respond to the depth of my pain, but I wasn't showing it to them. So the way that you respond to somebody who's just going through a rough time is much, much different than the way you respond to somebody who's having suicidal thoughts.
100%.
So I wasn't making them aware of that. So they couldn't love me to the level I needed to be loved because I wasn't telling them the level of my pain.
I look at it, I mean, it's so hard to tell, right? I mean, you're at a different age, or you're a young adult already, right? One thing, as you're aware, like I focus a lot of my attention on father entrepreneurs and parenting and all that. And I've studied a lot of parenting over the last years and understanding it and grasping it as much as I possibly can. And I've started from a very young age where we talked about this. I'm always home for dinner. I try to at least be home for dinner every night. And the reason I do this is I find having open dialogue with your children from a very young age keeps that dialogue going on. Mm-hmm. Because you could have a very disconnect when kids become teens. And my daughter just became a teen. That if you don't have that open dialogue, which I find the best time to talk, I don't know why. There's 2 opportunities I always find to talk with my daughter. Is one in front of a meal, because you're relaxed, you're enjoying, you're talking, you're laughing. Right. You could learn a lot about them. And the
Mhm.
second is I always take at least every 3 months, one day, and I usually use it as a reward day, or I'll take it if they
Mhm.
accomplished something good in school with an A, or they've done something good in their dance recital or something. Instead of rewarding her with a gift, I'll reward her with time. And I'll actually pull her out of school, or I'll pull my son out of school, and I'll spend the day with them. And having that open bond of going to have a meal, going shopping, spending the whole day one-on-one, you open up a lot, and you build that trust that they could talk to you about anything. And I find that a lot of parents don't do that from a very young age. So when children or become teens and then become young adults, they've never had that open dialogue with their parents, and they don't know how to ask for that help when it is needed. Because there is a lot of times when social media, the
Mhm.
world, there's a lot of hatred, there's a lot of evil in this world. As much as a lot of people don't want to admit it, as much as there's good in this world, there's a lot of evil. And
Mhm.
having children, from children to teens to adults, having that open dialogue with them, you're hoping will avoid situations where, like yourself, not having almost that moment to open up to their parents, and not knowing how to open up to parents when they need them the most, right? That makes any
Yeah.
sense?
No, no, I agree with you. And the way that I was brought up was, my parents, if they you don't know what you don't know. Like
100%, 100%.
my dad didn't have a dad in his like my dad my dad's dad was so absent. Like, it's not even like he wasn't even really in his life. So,
Yeah.
my dad was always around, and I know if I would have talked to them, so they didn't take the lead like you're suggesting, but they
Yeah.
definitely had the heart.
Yeah.
And then there also was this problem that, like, there's an assumption because I'm having external success that equals internal success. That's not always true. Sometimes through willpower, through being gifted and talented, you can be externally successful. You can be a great salesperson, great businessman, great businesswoman, but inwardly you're failing. You feel like you don't belong. You're struggling with imposter syndrome. You don't like yourself. And so that was the hard thing for them, is they would see me like get turned up and score all these points and like dominate the field and have all these friends and not even like think like something's wrong with this kid.
What would be your advice, Darryll? Like, if some young teen right now, or some young adult is listening to this, and it doesn't have to be sports. Their identity could be, it could be anything else. It could be dance, it could be acting, it could be whatever it is. And they're stuck in this identity, and they're losing control, or they feel like they're spiraling out of control internally. What advice would you give? And second, how do you recognize it?
If I'm speaking to the individual who's struggling themselves, my advice is speak up. Talk to someone that cares about you. Talk to someone who you might think might care about you. Call a suicide prevention hotline that's available all the time, 24/7, 7 days a week. Send an email to somebody. Reach out on a direct message, because depression grows in darkness, but it multiplies in isolation. So when you're fighting that thing alone, it gets worse and worse and worse. So let's just bring it out of the darkness and into the light. I'll tell you, there's a bunch of stuff, man. I mean, I'm a mental health guy, and I would definitely affirm whatever that person's insecurity is. Typically, it's that they don't matter, their future is meaningless. I actually wrote a blog post on this called "The 5 Lies of Depression." I highly recommend everyone goes to read that. It's on Athlete Network's website, and it's also on our website, Second Chance Athletes, because depression usually tells us 5 lies. And one of those lies is that your future is meaningless, right? So why live it out? And the way that I always say this is, take this from somebody who's living the life that I tried to end, that your life has purpose and it's not meaningless. And pain is temporary, but purpose lasts forever. So just survive, hang in there, talk to people, and tell your mind the exact opposite of what it's telling you to remain in that depressive state.
So it's essentially you're reframing your mind.
Absolutely. You're reframing your mind. You're letting people in so you can be loved. You're taking ownership over your personal mental health. So absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't know if we talked about this last week or not, but I was talking to somebody about this. I'm not a proponent on New Year's resolutions and stuff like that, because everybody one way or another was affected through 2020, whether it's business, whether it's personal, whether it's self-isolation. You're not going out of the, I know tons of people that I talk to on a regular basis where they're working from home now. And that's a just different mindset. And especially if you're single. And now, I'll give you an example. My sister, she's in her 40s. She's single. She has an amazing career, but because of COVID, she's working out of her condo. And she's and I talked to her, and you could tell has a different light. She's not the same energy, the same vibe anymore, because now she doesn't have that human connection every day. And it's very important, I think, for the person going through the situation, but it's also very important for everyone else. Look at your circle of friends, look at your circle of people that are around you, and go through and see, who haven't I talked to in a while? What are they up to? Because sometimes, and I always say this, that one phone call or that one text could change somebody's life. So reach out to people, know who is, like we talked about your schedule. You have your white blocks, your schedule. Like spend 15 minutes a day and go through your Rolodex and contact people that you haven't talked to in a while, and just see what they're up to, see how they're doing. Maybe that one phone call could change somebody's life, right? So I think it's very important for people that might not be going through a situation, but they could also help somebody that is going through a situation without even realizing it, right?
Sure. Let me speak to that a little bit, because I didn't answer the second part of your question, which is like, if someone, how do you know if someone you love or care about is like in that place? And this goes really both ways, because these are signs of depression, right? Yeah. Number one, self-care goes out the window. Stop showering, stop eating regularly, stop exercising. Because self-care is caring for self. And so if you're struggling with depression, the first thing usually to go out the window is like, man, I don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning. I don't feel like showering. I don't feel like taking care of myself because I don't value myself. Another sign is when something is off, right? When the person's just not themselves, all right? Typically they're going through something. They haven't talked about it. And if you have that feeling like, man, something's different. Their energy level isn't the same. Something's just off. Just ask the question. And typically, if a person struggles with depression, here's the answer you'll get. Hey, man, I noticed something was a little off with you, Jeff, man. What's going on? Nothing. You see what I'm saying? Why? Because it's scary to be vulnerable. Yeah. So let me tell you what I say. And I work with athletes. So, I mean, it's hard to crack an athlete shell because, they're tough, right? Of course. And so I'll say, listen, man, I can tell you're going through something. Let me know what's going on. So I just assume that they're struggling, and that just pierces straight to the heart, because they can't wiggle out of that. I'm not giving them an out. Yeah. And typically here it comes. It's like, well, man, I don't know, man. I just been feeling like, and this is meaningless, man. And, I try to reach out to this, and 10 seconds later we're crying, and so, when something's off, when self-care starts going out the window, when a person stops being excited or motivated for their future. All right. I can think of a handful of people right now that are in my colleague circle, and man, they have no motivation to excel. And it's because, again, they're not valuing themselves. And so if you see, man, why is it? And a lot of millennials, especially, like, they don't want to apply for jobs and just sit on social media all day. And it's just one of those things. The other thing is overeating, right? A lot of times people emotionally eat when you're depressed. So sometimes you'll see the opposite, where it's either you don't eat or you eat way too much because you're just comforting yourself, or you're drinking too much. Like, you're doing all of these things to numb the pain that's really going on inside. And those are a few signs. So watch out for that and make sure you speak to it. And let me say this, because I get this question all the time, Jeff. I know you didn't ask this, but like, there's always this things like, oh, well, what do I say to a person? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how am I supposed to, like, if it's not like my daughter, like my child, or like, it's like a kind of a friend. And I always tell people this, like be direct and encourage them to get help, because like I just had somebody reach out to me a couple of days ago. I think I might have told you about this. And they were like, oh, well, I don't really want to say anything because I don't want to assume. And this, I said, no. Listen, if that person is showing you signs of depression, I'm telling you, it's 10 times worse than what they're showing you.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we're not used to being vulnerable. So I said, don't play with that. Like, be direct, ask them what's really going on, and let them know you see it, and don't let them off the hook. And then make sure you validate them to know, like, hey, it's okay. And I tell people to use my story all the time. Hey, I know this guy, he's a high achiever. He still sees a counselor. He knows, he's got some recommendations. And so like basically, you're not broken because you're depressed. Like, we all struggle. And so just affirm that person so they can get the help they need.
Yeah, I love that. And it could be from exactly what you said, a lot of your coworkers, a lot of entrepreneurs, and this is Entrepreneurial podcast.
Yeah.
2020 was a tough year. Right? And it could be a tough year where some people strived, some people took their business to new levels, some people just put gas on the fire and just took off and said, I ain't laying nothing slow me down. And then there's other people that took a step back, and that 1 week became 2 weeks and 3 weeks and 4 weeks. And months later, they're still spiraling, trying to figure out their business, right? Things with 2020, that's what I was going to talk to you about. A lot of people look at it as a New Year's resolution. And reality is there isn't a New Year's resolution. If you can't do something any time of the year, you're not going to do it. That's one. Second, it's true, no?
I mean, I believe it, dude. And people get, I can't wait to the new year. I'm like, it's like, you can make a new year today if you want to. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And but the thing is 2020 to 2021, it just steamed. It's just one straight line. And now all of a sudden, 2 weeks, 3 weeks are passing. The credit card bills are coming now from all that money they spent on Christmas, and the winter is dragging on. And especially out in the East here, it's cold, it's snowy, and the winter's dragging on. You're home, you're stuck because we're going through a state of emergency again, which is, I can't understand. Well, it's another day, but we're all locked down again, and people are home. And it's so important for people to not be scared. If anybody takes anything out of it, because you've given so much information today, but if somebody could take anything out of this, is being able to ask for help. Do not be scared to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And if you don't feel comfortable asking a friend, a peer, a family member, there are so many professionals like Darryll, and out there are so many people that have the heart and the care and the open arms to listen. And sometimes it just takes something to listen. So do not be scared, or do not be too tough, or do not be too arrogant not to understand that it's okay to ask for help. Because I think that's so important. And I appreciate people like you, right?
Yeah, thank you.
What's crazy is I'm actually, when this airs, is actually usually I pre-record 6 or 8 weeks in advance, and I'm actually going to air this next week. I'm going to flip some stuff around, because next week in Toronto, and I don't know if it is in the US, it's Bell Let's Talk. And it's a big thing. They actually Bell, which is the massive communication network here for internet, for phones, everything like that. So it's a massive brand. They do something called Bell Let's Talk on the 28th of January, where you could text, every text you send to a friend, they donate a certain amount of money for mental health. So I want to actually release that on that day, because I think this is very important in our conversation today, because it's something that could help hopefully open the eyes with our audience here. And I got a decent audience, open up the eyes to a lot of people. So I appreciate what you're saying and everything like that. So let's fast forward. Let's get back into your story. So we're going through college, and you're kicked off the team. And what happened at that point?
Yeah, so I started attempting all the suicides, like I mentioned, and I ended up at a psychiatric unit in Detroit, Michigan. The long story short, I was there, and I had a woman come and witness to me, and I found my faith there in the psychiatric unit, and I was completely changed. Depression was gone, and I felt lighter, I felt motivated, and I had something very, very dangerous called hope. And that hope was dangerous, man, because that wasn't something that I had before. I felt hopeless and helpless, but in that psychiatric unit gave me hope. And so I left there.
How long were you there for, Darryll?
Just like, I always hesitate to tell this story because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I was there for like 2 days. I think I was supposed to be there for like a minimum 3 to 5.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And those 2 days showed you so much of a light, huh?
The one day did. The when I got there, because of what happened. And it
was a one person that really touched you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And do you keep in contact with that person for any chance?
I don't. Still don't know who she is. Still don't know.
Have you ever tried to figure out who she is?
I never have. I mean, if you really want to have the conversation, I my guess is she was an angel. Never, never. You know, I can't even. It's a crazy story. So, yeah, man.
You want to get into that story?
It's up to you, man. It's your podcast.
Let's go. Let's do it.
You want to go there?
Yeah, let's go there.
All
man.
right.
I'm enjoying this conversation. Here we go. Let's go.
So, I had just attempted suicide for at least the third time, like a serious attempt, and not like a half attempt. And my mother convinced me to drive to Detroit to talk to her. So I drove there, and she was trying to get me to eat because I hadn't ate for so long. And I managed to get down some soup. My mother goes down to bed. I lay on the couch. I'm still having all these thoughts about wanting to end it. So I'm like, I'm going to go finish what I started, which at that time was I was going to, drive my car off the side of a highway. And my mother must have heard the screen door creak when I came out, because she ran out, and before I could pull out of the driveway, she threw herself on the hood of my car and was just like, let me get you some help. At this time, I had been crying so long that my eyes were swollen, kind of shut, and all I could see is just a little bit out the bottom of them, like just out of the slit. And she took me to this hospital, which I now know to be a psychiatric care unit. And the doctor starts asking me questions. Why did you want to kill yourself? What was going through your mind? I'm just like facing those thoughts. I was like, just leave me alone. I just want to die. He kept trying to drill me for a little bit, and finally just gave up. He left and was going to go finish my paperwork so they can admit me upstairs to the care unit. And my mom's there. One of my sisters is there. I believe my dad is there at this point. And it's just so heavy, man. Nobody knows how I got this way. And I'm just sitting here crying, bawling. Remember, I'm 219 pounds. I'm frail. I don't even look healthy anymore. And this woman, I call her the woman with green pants, because that's all I could see of her. And she comes in the room and she wraps me in her arm and she says, I don't know who you are, and I don't have any jurisdiction to be back here in this part of the hospital, but God sent me back here to tell you that you need to say yes to him. And I was like, yes, what is that going to do? That's not going to heal my back. That's not going to bring my girlfriend that left me back. That's not going to take away my pain or my depression. Like, I don't believe in religion. I'm agnostic. Like, leave me alone. I just want to die. My mother said that this woman prayed for me for about 15 minutes. It felt like 5, because the whole time I just kept screaming at her, leave me alone. I just want to die. She left and she said she would come back to check on me. About 15, 20 minutes later, my grandmother had driven from Jackson, Michigan to Detroit, where I was at. And she runs through and bursts through my doors, and she's out of breath, and she wraps me kind of in her arms. And she says, baby, I've been praying for you all the way here. God told me you know exactly what to do. You need to say yes to him. And it was the same request a second time from 2 different people who never talked to each other, didn't know each other. And I couldn't deny that it was God's way of speaking to me. But grandma was a religious person. She was supposed to say something religious. So I literally just pushed her away and I said, Grandma, just leave me alone. I just want to die. And the best way I know how to describe it is, the room is so heavy with depression that it feels like wet blankets is weighing on us. Everyone's quiet. No one knows what to do. And all I hear is this still small voice speak to my heart and say, son, will you say yes to me? And it was something about hearing our Heavenly Father's voice that gave me the strength to mutter out a yes. And the moment that I said it, it was my surrender. It was me putting my faith in Christ. And the depression that I was under for years literally vanished. My eyes that were swollen shut got healed. I can open them and see it again. Jeff, it felt so good. I didn't know what else to do. I just kept screaming, yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, Lord. The doctor hears me yelling. He comes in the room and he's like, yo, what is going on? And I was like, I was running from God and I just said yes to him. He said, let's hurry up and get him upstairs. True story. True story, man. And that was the day my life changed, man. And, the psychiatric unit was an interesting experience. Man, I've been forever changed since. got into marketing, graduated my degree in integrated public relations, won some higher education marketing awards with a phenomenal team at CMU, did marketing consulting, did donor development, pastored and revitalized the church, moved to Atlanta, Georgia, Metro Atlanta in 2017, started Second Chance Athletes, where we help athletes transition out of sports, became a 2-time TEDx speaker, wrote a best-selling book, got married, like had 3 daughters, like, and dude, I could never imagine this life. I'm crying for 2 reasons. I'm crying because, I'm thinking about my daughters, and I'm thinking about the fact that I wasn't thinking about them when I was getting ready to commit suicide, and I was going to miss out on the joy of their life. And I get to experience it. They're so hilarious, dude. They're funny. And I'm not kidding. Like, they're so amazing.
How old are your daughters?
7, 5, no, 7, 4, and 2. She's getting ready to be, the 2-year-old's getting ready to be 3. But people love them so much. They're like, we're tired of seeing, like, they keep asking me to post more pictures on my social media of them. I'm like, I can't. Like, I have a brand. I can't just make it all kids. So I literally had to start their separate page so people can just, like, watch their cool kid moments. And the other reason I was crying is because I was just thinking about, man, some of these messages I get. Like, I get at least 2 or 3 messages per day from people all over the world who are just like, I can't even imagine. Like, I got a message from this girl. I mean, she's got like over 100K following on Instagram, and she's a super high level executive and all this stuff. And she's got all these accolades, bro. And she's reaching out to me because she feels like I'm the only person that she can talk to, dude. She doesn't even know me. She watched my TEDx talk. She binge watched some of my contact. And I'm like, people are really that alone and struggling that bad that they'll reach out to a stranger. You know what I mean? And so I'm just crying because that's not what I was thinking about when I was trying to end my life. I was just thinking about my pain, what I lost in sports, what I couldn't do for my family. I wasn't thinking about who I could help, who I could serve. I was so self-focused. I wasn't others-focused. And man, I'm just so grateful that I survived because of the life that I get to experience now.
And it's not only the life you're experiencing, is exactly what you said, Darryll. It's if your life alters and changes the life of one person by your message, you could lay your head down on your pillow every night and know that you've done something amazing in this world. And I think that's such a precious gift. And I think a lot of us live our lives, not selfishly, but a lot of us live our lives just living. You wake up, you have your routine, you go to bed, you don't think of what is going through other people's minds, what's going through other people's thoughts.
Yeah.
And being able to help even one person, it alters the course of your destiny, right?
Yeah.
And I do agree. I mean, your daughters are obviously your life, and when you have children, they become. You understand, and I think this is the greatest gift, is once you have children, you learn to understand the words of unconditional love.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's something that's so powerful, Darryll, that a lot of people sometimes never understand or get to experience. And once you do have children, you understand the unconditional love.
Yeah.
But that unconditional love, you have to keep nurturing it.
Yeah.
And growing it. And that is also within yourself. And if you're not happy, and if you're not satisfied, if you're not in a good place mentally, physically, spiritually, you're not being able to nurture anybody around you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first thing, and we have this conversation, I think, is and I always put an epitome, is health, taking care of yourself first.
Yeah.
Physically, being able to be active, be strong, be able to do physical activities with your family, be able to be with them, be able to live a long life to be there, but it's also the mentally and the spiritually. And spiritually, Absolutely. It doesn't have to be religion. It could be your own beliefs. It could be personally. It could be simple, even something simple like believing in karma or believing in having a purpose. What I mean by purpose is, I think we talked about this. standing in a grocery store at a line and turning around and somebody looks down and giving them a smile. I think that's one of the biggest gifts we could do is smile. And that's one thing I teach my children from a very young age. When we would go anywhere to a mall or anything, there's two things that I always tell them to do. Always hold the door for somebody and just smile at people.
Yeah.
Because that smile, the simplest little thing is smiling could alter that person's thought process for that day. And I think that's very special. Yeah. And understanding how to deal with other people's, I don't want to say mood swings or thought process. Because, for example, you could be driving and somebody cuts you off, and it's how you react to that moment is going to alter the transition for everything else. So do you react back? Do you just take a deep breath and like, you know what, life goes on? Knowing how to reframe your mind in the right situations. So I think everything you've done is a gift. And I think you have a lot more gifts to pass along the rest of your journey. And I think your journey is to be a long journey. And I appreciate your journey because I think you have a very special message to send to people and to share. And I think you're going to help a lot of people. And I honestly do mean that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you for allowing me to share my story. And thank you for our listeners as well, for listening to this big guy cry. I wasn't going to go there, man. And you took me there. So yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you. And I think we're going to have we talked about this the other day, and I think there's a lot of things we're going to be doing together because I'm a strong believer, and I've always been like this. You surround yourself around good people and good things happen.
Yeah.
So I'm a strong believer in surrounding yourself. It's not the most successful people. It's not the most achievable people. It's the best people. And together, if you have a good heart and a good purpose, good things happen. So I believe there's a lot of good that we could do together. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate your story, and I appreciate you as a father, because when you're talking about your daughters, your eyes and your gleam and your smile is contagious. Like little gap between your teeth is very contagious. and I think your daughters are very lucky to have you. And I know you're going to be a good father. And there's a lot of estrogen running around your house. So are you aiming for a boy, or you guys are done?
I'm out the game, man. You know, I haven't made it official, but I sure am. Like, I'm out, man. And my wife, she still wants to try, but I'm like, I cannot imagine having a fourth girl. Like, I just can't.
You know what they say, right? Daughters are the ones that are going to take care of you one day. So
they say that. They say that, man.
Yeah, man, with 3 daughters, you're taking care of.
They do, man. And it's so funny, dude. They love, like, because I'm boring. Like, I'm a pretty boring person, but my daughters, like, on my birthday, I would be happy with doing nothing. Yeah. They decorate the place. They do cake. Like, they make me celebrate. And they're just so cute. They're like, we got to do this. We got to do this for daddy. And so, like, yeah, they already take great care of me, man. So I'm extremely, extremely blessed.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to go a couple more things before you get out of here today.
Yeah, go for it.
How's your relationship with your parents now?
My relationship has always been good with my parents.
Yeah. I meant it in that way. I meant it like in a way where I always ask this, because when somebody's achieved something, they're doing well in their life and they're helping others. I always ask, and sometimes I question whether it's the right phrase or the right words to say, but I always say, is how proud are your parents of you at this moment? And I'm always hesitant to ask that because as a parent, I look at my son and you know the story, everything he's been through. And I sit there and it's like every time I see him achieve something, or every time I see him just his smile on me, I just glimmer because I'm just so proud of him. Yeah. And I'm so proud of the lessons he taught me. Yeah. And he's too young to realize all the lessons he's taught me. Yeah. And he's taught me more lessons than anybody, no mentor, no one's going to teach me the lessons he's taught me. And I think you have probably taught your parents a lot of lessons, as much as sometimes when you sit back and you think of everything you've been through, it might be something where you put a lot of your parents through a time of stress and anxiety and hardship, but those are all lessons that grew you guys closer in a closer bond. So how proud are your parents of you?
Man, I love what Les Brown says. He says, you're never too old to learn and you're never too young to share. Yeah. My parents are extremely proud. They've always been proud. My mom could care less about all the accolades. I mean, she just loves her baby boy. Yeah. My dad's, an achiever, so he loves both. He loves me, but he loves the success as well. Yeah. And it's crazy, my dad, I'm like, he's my dad, but I'm his spiritual advisor, I guess. Like he calls me all the time, and I'm counseling him, and we have a really good relationship to be able to he'll literally like call me about marriage problems, call me about life problems, and I'll like walk him through it. And and it's a crazy dynamic.
It's a crazy dynamic because as you get older, there's two things. You learn to appreciate your parents, and you learn the lessons they taught you without subconsciously. It's like it's an indirect mentoring, and I always talk about that as parents. A lot of parents indirectly mentor their children without realizing which is good or bad. So, like, I'll give you a little thing. Like my dad. Now that I'm older and I'm understanding, and years back I could understand. My dad, even though he was a blue collar factory worker, worked his rear off 2 weeks day, 2 weeks night at Ford Motors. He understood that wealth equaled freedom. And what I meant by that, and it's not that he would say it or talk about it, but he understood it because back then working at Ford, you're getting paid 30 something bucks an hour. So if you worked on a weekend, you were paying time and a half. So you're making crazy money. So everybody that worked at Ford, all the women would work weekends because you're making a shitload of money. And to him, the money meant nothing. To him, Ashley spending time with his family on the weekends is what meant. And he never missed a weekend. He was there every single weekend. So he understood that from a far point, understanding that wealth equal freedom. And for him working Monday to Friday like a dog gave him the freedom to be with us every weekend and never missing a weekend to spend time and never miss a game or never miss a moment with us. So I understand that. And it's crazy now that the roles have reversed and our parents are a little older. Now they turn to us for advice. They turn to us for help. And it's scary because now you're looking at your parents and you realize that time is not on everybody's side, right? So you see that, so you want to spend as much time with them, but you also understand how precious it is that they appreciate you and appreciate what you've done and want to take back and learn from you now. So there's two ways to look at it, right?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, you said it. It's really, I agree. I see it both ways. So yeah.
I love this. I'm going to ask you one last question.
Let's do it.
If you were to pass today in a few words, how would you want to be remembered by your loved ones and your family?
For how I love and for how I gave.
Love it. Simple and sweet.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I already wrote my eulogy. And I wrote it as if my wife was giving it. And so, but the cool thing about that is when I wrote my eulogy, this was like, I don't know, it was probably about 7-8 years ago. I realized that in order for what I wrote to be true, it would require daily consistent actions.
Yeah.
And so I want to be remembered for how I loved and for how I gave. And, that's it, man.
I love it. Is there any last words you want to say to our audience?
Man, reach out if I can be a help to you. Know that, your story matters. I know we didn't get into the public speaking thing, and that's fine, but your story matters, whether you're a paid speaker or you have an audience of one in your family. Like every time you open, like your voice has power and your story has the potential to make a great impact. And so in the words of Dr. Seuss, to the world, you may just be someone, but to someone, you may be the world.
I love that saying. I've heard that so many times. I love that saying. Perfect way to end it. On all our show notes, I'm going to put all our information, how to get a hold of Darryll and all his social media links, his website. If you're a public speaker looking to up your game, Darryll's got the experience, and I'm sure he could guide you in the right direction. So we'll put all the links to that. And I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Appreciate you too, man.
This has been two really good conversations in a matter of a week. And like I said, I'm going to air this at the perfect time for a lot of people to listen because I think it's going to impact a lot of people, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to things we could collaborate and work together because I think there's a bright future for both of us.
Absolutely. I can't wait to meet your son, man.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, brother.
All right.
Cheers.
Peace.
That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our good friend Darryll Stinson for being such an amazing guest with such a powerful story and such an important topic on mental health. If you guys enjoyed this, podcast as much as I did, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word. We're trying to build something special here. Leave a review. 5 stars would be absolutely amazing. We love spending time reading the reviews. We greatly appreciate it. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.